Again, please switch on your camera. I've been telling the class already, like thrice already. But those who message me having problems with their video, you are excused. But those who doesn't have any problems, please switch on your camera so we can start already. Let's not waste our time, okay? We have wasted 10 minutes already waiting for some of you, and some of you have not even switched on your cameras yet. Okay, sige, let's start. Wait, I can't see. Share screen. Okay. Um, so I guess it's being recorded already. Okay, so last time we talked about an introduction of what research is. We said that when we talk about practical research one, we will be doing qualitative research, which is descriptive in nature. We won't make use of measurements, numbers, statistics. So we'll make use of the five senses in terms of trying to be able to understand where people are coming from, the phenomena, practices, and their stories. So we'll try to be able to understand where they're coming from. Another important part, I think, of research that we talked about is that um, there are uh, tests important, like what do you call this organization? The Rotary, no? The five-way test. In doing research, you have the four-way test. Primarily, number one, that your research should be interesting. Number two, that it should be feasible. Number three, it should add to the new body of knowledge. And number four, you need to have the ability and training for you to be able to conduct the study. Again, there are tests for you to be able to determine whether you're in the right direction of doing your research. So like in the Rotary Club, they have the four-way test. In research, we have the four-way test as well. Number one, it should be interesting. Number two, it should be feasible. Number three, it should add to the new body of knowledge. And number four, you should have the ability and the training for you to be able to really do research. Another important part in research, which you have to know, and I have allotted a lecture in this one, is ethics in doing research. It is considered to deal with the beliefs about what is right, wrong, which is proper, improper, good, bad. And when you say ethical, you have to conform to accepted professional practice. That when you do research, you cannot just simply interview someone because you like it and because it's a requirement in your class. That should not be. There are certain protocols before you will have to be able to interview someone. You need consent, you need approval from your teacher. Let's say you'd like to be able to interview an ethnic group. Kunyari, example, the manobos or the igorots or the badjaos, you cannot just simply go there and interview them. You have to be able to you have to be able to ask permission to their tribal leader or ask the ethnic committee in the barangay or the barangay officials for you to be able to conduct your research. So that's how you do it. Now, going back to the definition of ethics as seen in the presentation, you need to be able to understand certain principles for you to be guided in your decision making, and hopefully later on you'll be able to reconcile conflicting values. Now, people may disregard on ethics because it's based on people's personal value system, but what can we do? We have to be able to respect them. There are standards here in the Philippines that might be different from, let's say, countries in the Middle East and other Southeast Asian countries in Europe and Australia and many other parts of the world. So we have to abide with certain ethical standards. What one person considers, again, to be good or right may be considered bad or wrong by another person. So we have to be sensitive. Now, ethics, again, inulit na naman, we talk about norms, standards, rules of conduct, and in the research process that guide our moral choices. Now, they say ethics and morality go hand in hand or together. They cannot be interchanged. And ethics are social and cultural constructs and are grounded in the values of time and place. And the goal of ethics in research is to ensure that no one is harmed and suffer from adverse consequences from research activities. You have to make sure that when you interview someone, you don't hurt the feelings of the participants that you're going to interview. That when you finish interviewing them, they won't feel bad. Okay? And they won't feel that they have been discriminated after you have been able to have asked questions pertaining to your research. Now, there is no absolute ethics. Now, because when we talk about the ethical standards, they are expressed as absolutes, but must operate relatively. So when we accept ethics in a specific period and location, it can change relatively to change of period and location. That, for example, there are here in the Philippines, when you ride the train, there are wala namang wala namang of course there are rules that you have to follow, no, that you have to keep quiet inside the train, you don't talk, no. But here in the Philippines, you could actually hear some of those who are riding the train na maingay, no, walang sumisita. That's fine. But when you travel, for example, in Taiwan, Japan, and Korea, you have to keep quiet inside the train. You have to respect your seatmate. You have to respect those people who are riding the train. Meron naman doon, the train systems, you have to be able to set the seat for those who are disabled and those who are elder, for those who are senior. I think in all train stations naman, there are allotted seats that we have to follow for those who are disabled and those who are senior elders. So research ethics is the way to conduct a research primarily with integrity and morally upright. Now, the human research ethics, what are the basics of it? Research conducted with people and research conducted about people. So you deal here with the data, or not tissue, but the issues evolving the data that you will be collecting. So again, why is it important? A reflection of respect of those who take part in research. And you have to ensure no unreasonable or unsafe or thoughtless demands are made by the researchers. So you don't have to be demanding because you're the ones doing the research. To ensure sufficient knowledge is shared by all concerned. So when you're done doing your research, you have to be able to when you have finished transcribing it, putting it into paper, analyzing it, you code it, you create your themes and answering your research questions. Later on, you need to go back to your participants and tell them that this is the actual results, or this are the transcription or the manuscript of all the things that you have said during the actual interview. So it composes a common standard in all above respects. So it has become the norm as expectation for any research activity. It's a professional requirement, whether you're a senior high school, undergraduate student, graduate student. It's a professional requirement we have to follow. And the requirement for access to participants and others is very important. So the participant need to be able to access later on the information that you're going to be able to collect from them. So these are the principles or the guiding principles to which we need to be able to understand. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to memorize this one. We're not going to do research and ask you to memorize. These are nice to know things, especially in research, so as you will be aware later on, okay, of the do's and don'ts. Okay, so I won't ask these questions in your quizzes. We're not going to do that. Okay, that's a lower level way of learning, because in research you need to write. In research you need to actually look for those data that will answer later on your research questions. That's what we are going to do later on. I'm just presenting to you, and hopefully you'll be able to understand and digest this one, because this is very important. We have to respect human dignity, regardless of the physical, and being. Okay, regardless of ethnicity, we have to respect it. Okay, or gender preference, especially when you're doing research, you have to respect that. Free and informed consent, that the participant that you're going to interview said yes. Okay, you informed them, you gave them a consent letter asking them if they can be interviewed, so as later on, when let's say the participants would tell you, um, hindi ko naman pinayagan, but you can always tell them that, hey, you gave me an informed consent, you signed the letter, so as later on you cannot be sued for it because you have a permission letter coming from your participants. Respect for the vulnerable persons. For example, those let's say if you're doing a research on the LGBTQ, okay, you have to be no, not the vulnerable persons. Let's say kunyari with conditions, no. Let's say those parents with sons and daughters with cerebral palsy, with conditions. Okay, you have to be careful. You have to be sensitive in terms of the questions that you're asking. Let's say children are vulnerable persons. That's why you cannot interview them directly. You need to ask permission from the parents. Respect for the privacy and confidentiality. You cannot tell your classmate Gabrielle, okay, or Maxine that, for example, you got the information from Angeline that Angeline is like this and that. You can't do that. Okay, there is privacy and confidentiality. So because if you do that and you share information, no, there is a disclosure in the agreement that you're going to be able to do this only for academic purposes. Pero pag sinabi mo yan, ginawa mo yung ganon, you can be sued for that. So we have to be careful. Respect for the justice and inclusiveness, and you have to balance the harms and benefit. If you feel later on that your research would actually cause emotional problems or distress to the participants, you might want to think about it. Okay, baka maghimagsik, no, yung mga participants or yung community because of the research that you're going to be able to do. And that's why you have to minimize the harm. Okay, and think about minimizing the harm and maximizing the benefit. So when we talk about human dignity, the cardinal principle, the basis of our ethical obligations, there are two important essential components: the selection achievement of the morally accepted ends and the morally accepted means to those ends. Okay, meaning the end just not justify the means, and you have to protect the multiple and the interdependent interests of the person, the bodily, the psychologically, and cultural integrity. Okay, you cannot, for example, you're interviewing let's say the ITAS, no? You have to be culturally sensitive. Okay? Ay, di ba yan yung AITA, yung mga maiitim, yung mga makulot yung buhok, yung ganito, yung hindi naliligo. You don't say that. Okay? You are disrespecting their cultural identity. Okay? Kaya ka pala, siguro, kaya ka pala depressed because you have not been talking to people. No, you can't do that, no? Because that might be able to add on to the hurt feeling already of that particular person that you are actually going to do as part of your as part of the participants. Okay. Next, consent is very important. Again, you have to ask permission. Presumption that individuals have capacity and the right to make free and informed decisions. They can tell you, I don't like, so you just have to respect that. In research, there's a dialogue, process, rights, duties, requirements for free informed consent by the research subject. Your research cannot proceed without consent. Again, I repeat, your research cannot proceed without consent. Sir, ano gagawin ko? You can't do anything. You have to wait for the actual yes of the participant. Although it's verbal, it's a must that you be able to give them the actual letter. Consent must be maintained throughout. Okay? Because it's an agreement between you and the participants. Vulnerable persons, ethical obligations towards vulnerable persons, they diminish their competence, especially those who are not in the age of reasoning. They cannot think for themselves, and that's why, for example, children, you will have to interview the parents. You would have to ask permission from the teachers. Okay? So entitled to special protection, special procedures to protect their interests and entitlement. So based on the grounds of human dignity, caring, solidarity, fairness, to special protection against abuses, exploitation, and discrimination. Let's say you are going to conduct a research about rape victims. Okay? So ayan, ano yun? It's a very sensitive research that entails, certain ways of seeking approval. Kasi alam mo na, baka mali yung mga tanong na tatanungin mo in the actual research process itself. There is privacy and confidentiality. This is the fundamental human dignity. Standards protect the access, control, dissemination of the personal information, and helps to protect the mental, psychological integrity. Then harms and benefits, you have to balance both. Okay. Then justice and inclusiveness. There should be fairness, equity. There should be procedural justice. There should be distributive justice. There is non-maleficence as a principle. Your duty to avoid, to prevent, or minimize the harm. Okay? So you have to think of that. No? Kung you might want to edit your questions for your participants. And then we have the beneficence, the duty to benefit others, the duty to maximize the net benefits of the research that you're going to be able to do. Okay, and research ethics, the areas of focus, the harm, informed consent, confidentiality, deception, reporting results, and plagiarism. These are the focus on doing research. Harm, again, you should be able to think of this one. Dapat hindi kayo nakakasakit doon sa inyong gagawin na doon sa mga participants that you're going to be able to interview. There should be informed consent, no? Voluntary informed consent is essential. And there should be confidentiality. So here, all information collected in a research project should remain confidential. Hindi po pwede yan, again, to be able to share that to your friends, to your relatives. Participants should be assigned, hindi na to, that's for the higher research, and data should be locked away in a secure setting and the electronic databases should also be protected. Okay, so you should be able to protect them para hindi ma-hack rin. And of course, plagiarism. This is very important. It comes from the Latin word meaning to kidnap. Examples of plagiarism, which we have to give emphasis: copying someone else's words without proper citation, stealing someone else's idea, stealing someone else's intellectual property. The bottom line here is that you have to cite sources properly and minimize quotations in research reports. If you don't own it, don't claim it. If you don't own it, don't claim it. You have to cite it. And later on, in the course of our discussion research, I'll be able to teach you the right way, which is the APA style, or the American psychological way of citing references. Ethical considerations, I think objectivity, integrity, respect of the research subjects, right to privacy, dignity, protection of subjects from personal harm. I think that was made mention already earlier, no? And of course, you have to present your research findings. Okay, kung ano man yung naging result, you have to be able to later on give that, okay, the findings to your participants. You misuse of research role, okay, you have to tell them honestly what is your role, that you're doing this for as a requirement, as an academic requirement for your subject in the senior high school. And you have to acknowledge your collaboration with other people and assistance made or given to you by a teacher and others. And you should not be able to distort findings, okay, let's say by a sponsor. Normally this happens, no? Yung mga gumagawa ng research, because they're sponsored, they try to tweak the results in favor of their sponsor. That should not be, okay? That is a big no-no in doing research. So unethical practices in conducting research: deceiving a respondent about the true purpose of the study. Hindi mo sinasabi yung totoo, that you're doing this one, that this is sponsored, hindi mo sinasabi yung totoo, and you ask a respondent questions that cause him or extreme embarrassment. I think I made mention of this already. The guilt, emotional turmoil by remaining him or her of an unpleasant experience. No, yung there are questions that are irrelevant na tinatanong mo. So you can't do that, no? For example, if you're doing a research about the lived experiences of rape victims, of young rape victims, which is very sensitive, you cannot ask the rape victims, sino yung gumawa sa inyo niyan, saan, paano. No, you can't do that, no? Extreme embarrassment, and of course the dignity itself of the person. Invading the privacy of a respondent. Okay? Studying the respondents or research subjects without their knowledge. Kunyari, gumawa ka ng research tungkol kay Gabriel or kay Gino, hindi alam ni Gino yon. You can do that, no? Gino can actually sue you for that. When analyzing the data, revealing only parts of the facts and presenting facts out of context, falsifying findings, or offering misleading presentations such as lying with statistics, hindi pwede yon. You can't do that. Okay? Because you're not actually giving the right research or the conclusions, the actual results, and that should not happen. There is a so-called Republic Act 8293, which is the Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines, contains provisions regarding published works and copyright ownership. Okay, so you can be sued if you go against this law. If you don't own the information, no, don't claim it. And there are things like fact and opinion. Is it objective or subjective in doing research? And there are terms also that later on you will be encountering, such as the word reliability. Is the text dependable? Validity, is it correct? How sure are you that the text that you have written and your research you have written is valid? Give me proof. There's a term called triangulation in research, wherein you can actually tend to tell them that I did triangulation. I got my sources from journal articles, thesis dissertation. I have my participants with me. and I do have artifacts or evidences that would say that my work is valid. And you can always tell them that, I went back to my participants and showed them the results, as making sure that the things that I do is valid, or the research I did was valid. And of course, plus the opinion and suggestions of the professionals. So objective, a point of view that is not influenced by personal feelings or prejudice based on facts. It's unbiased. And subjective, a point of view that is based on a person's own moods, attitudes, and opinions. Normally, sabi nila, ang qualitative, it's subjective. Okay? Because you try to get the story of the person, his and or her experiences. So bias also, it's a point of view or interpretation that is slated or inspired with prejudice and personal feelings. So when you do your research, you should not be biased. Let's say, don't do a research na meron ka palang intention. For example, you would have to do a research on the lived experiences of COVID-19 patients in the area of Project 8 Quezon City. So kunyari, kung nagka-COVID ka o yung family member mo, you might be biased because you already know the experience of being or having a member of the family experiencing the COVID-19 symptoms. So tatanungin ka later on, how sure are you that you're not biased? So those are some of the things that you have to consider. Now, nice to know things. How do you know if a statement is subjective? Opinion, judgment, assumption, belief, rumor, suspicion. Subjective words can be seen on this side. So we have to look for the 3 R's. It should be reliable. It should be recent, meaning 5 years dapat ang source of information mo or the resources, the journal articles, thesis, and dissertation. Recent meaning 5 years, pabalik. 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, baka siguro pwede naman mga hanggang 2018 and 2017. It should be relevant. Does the book or the material or resources, is it useful? And does it support your research? Is it related to your topic or just an interesting data? Malalaman niyo yan later on in the review of related literature. So you have to be objective, value-free. You have to consider ethics. And let's see this one, okay? Before I show this one, let me just end this one with research, okay? Kasi itong video na to gives us, ideas about ethics. Sandali. Let me just... Okay, let me just share screen. I'm sure some of you have seen this commercial already. Share computer sound.
Ma?
Oo?
Ampun po ba ako?
Ha? Sino naman nagsabi sa'yo niyan?
Kasi ma, lagi na akong inaasar sa school eh. Ampun daw ako ma eh.
Anak, di ba sinabi ko sa'yo huwag ka magpapa-apekto sa sinasabi ng iba?
Pero ma, sabihin mo sa akin ma, ampun po ba ako? Ha? Ma! Ampun ba ako? Ha? May paliwanag mo po ba? May paliwanag mo bakit may 4 na baso ako sa likod?
Matagal na namin itinago ito sa'yo, anak. Pero sa palagay ko pa na pinagmalaman mo.
Okay, so yeah, I think we'll end with that video. So many things that we can actually wait. Okay, so many things that we can actually learn, no, from that video when you talk about ethics, no. Um, so many ideas like why did the parent, no, the mother didn't tell the truth, no, dun sa kanyang anak na may 4 na baso pala siya sa likod niya, and it's funny, no, but there's ethics behind that, no, and and many other ways, no. Is it morally right, no, not to tell not to tell the kid of yung kanyang na mag-iba siya doon sa kanyang nanay, no? It's a bit complicated, funny way of trying to let us understand that in this world there are a lot of things that we have to consider, no? Talking about the perspectives of other people. Okay, some people actually didn't like this commercial because they find it offending. Pero for me, it doesn't look offending, no? Nakakatuwa nga, eh, no? It's a creative way of trying to be different in terms of the commercial, probably a marketing strategy. But for some, okay, parang nakaka-disrespect, no? Because ano, yung it's so weird, no? Alien pala yung nanay mo, okay, hindi mo namang alam. So a lot of perspectives that we can actually see in that commercial, which was not really hindi tumagal yan sa national TV, no, because although it was a hit, no, in YouTube, pero hindi siya tumagal kasi in a society that we belong, if you show something really different na ganon, people will not be able to understand, no. And that's why when we do research, again, it should be interesting, it should be visible, it should add to the new body of knowledge, and you should have the ability and training to be able to do that. So if any of the four medyo kulang or kulang ng isa, you might have later on problems in doing your research. So the activity for next meeting, please prepare already. We will have a discussion on the 5 general topics that you are going to be able to do as part of your research. General lang muna, and you can focus on science or STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, anything under the sun. Just be specific later on, and we'll try to help you out in terms of your topic. Kasi after nyan, if I approve your topic already, the next step is for you to be able to look for references. As to the number, pag-usapan natin yan on Wednesday. I think that's it for today's meeting. Okay, I will try to upload the lecture in YouTube so as you can view it. Okay, thank you very much, and God bless everyone. Goodbye.